If you're the type that's always keen to move forward, then you may be feeling a little frustrated lately as you have a little less to invest in the share market with the rising cost of living and a little less options with the property market as the banks have been a little tight. So you may be in a season of waiting for your income to rise, waiting for interest rates to decrease, waiting for markets to be a bit more knowable. While you're sitting there, you can still make improvements. For example, you can review all the legal structures around you to ensure that if things don't go according to plan, there's still a plan to ensure things can go on. Sorting out your will, your enduring power of attorney, or reviewing your trust structure to make sure that it's actually still fit for purpose, well, it's almost as bad as reviewing your insurance. In today's episode of Chasing the Joneses, that's why it's kind of ironic, I think, that an insurance advisor, Carley Ellis, is having a chat with a solicitor, Ellen Snedden, about some of the legal structures and agreements we should have in place, but really struggle to get around to doing. During the times where you're not taking ground, and maybe that's right now for you, consider retaining the ground that you've already won. If you'd like to review your insurances, I've put an email address in the show notes to get a hold of Carley to review your insurances. And if it's your will or trust or any other legal thing that you'd like someone to take a look at, check out the same for the details on how to get a hold of Ellen. Hope you enjoyed this one today. It's not a detailed and heavy chat, but it is an important one. Let's get started. Hey, and welcome to Chasing the Joneses. While the world is changing, some things never change. You still need to work hard and take a few risks every now and then to achieve anything decent. But what if wealth in the future looks different? With so much uncertainty, how can we have the wealthy life today and tomorrow? In this series, I'll share views and strategies that everyday people use to build wealth. And the good news is, it doesn't come from a book. It comes from real life. Once your money thing is sorted out, on the way to chasing what you think success is, you might just learn how to surge ahead. So, if you're ready, let's go.
Today I'm joined by Ellen Snedden from Simpson Weston, who specialises in relationship property, family law, and most importantly, raising tiny humans. I'm very lucky to have Elle here today because she's actually still on maternity leave from having her last, potentially, baby in January. So welcome, know my height and weight, Ellen Snedden. Thanks for joining us. So, here at Ungaro & Co, we're in the business of building personal wealth and protecting it using insurance. But obviously there's another side that we need to be considering, which is the legal side. So very happy to have you here today because I get throwing questions all the time and I have no idea how to answer it because I am not a lawyer. So it's good to have a lawyer here. So we were talking just before about, we've got this bit of a U-turn of life, right? Where you're building up assets, you're maybe merging those assets with somebody else. There's other dependents that come into the fold and then they kind of drift away and then it's back to you again. So what are some of the things that we need to consider? And we'll start with when it's just me by myself. I'm starting to build my asset base from a legal standpoint. What do I need to think about?
So I think generally with the whole U-turn of life, no matter what stage you're at, you need to be thinking about, am I doing enough to protect myself, my asset base, my equity? And so when we consider that question, we just have to consider life changes. Circumstances evolve, and you've got to make sure that everything's aligned with that age and stage. When you start on your own, protecting yourself in terms of what happens if you become incapacitated or if you die.
But that doesn't happen to young people, does it? It does.
It does.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we're seeing particularly incapacity, more and more people, to put it colloquially, losing their marbles. Earlier, whether that's because they've had some kind of accident or injury, or whether it's early onset dementia. And it's becoming more common. And so you just need to make sure that your affairs are in line so that you can protect yourself in the event of these things happening.
Right.
Then as you progress through life, obviously you're entering relationships. You might be entering into second relationships, blended families. Society's changing in that regard. So factoring in all those dependents, and then children, grandchildren. And, after having 3 children myself, how quick that time has gone.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how the likes of my parents are feeling, being grandparents now, and making sure that they want to provide for not only myself, but also my dependents too, and factoring in that whole village.
If we look at losing your marbles, so say you are by yourself, you've built up some stuff, you may have bought your first home, you got KiwiSaver, all of that kind of stuff. Like, well, how do we protect ourselves?
Yep. So no matter what size your estate is, even if you don't have anything, you should have an enduring power of attorney.
Okay.
So you can have that both in regard to your care and your welfare, but also in terms of your asset base or your financials, okay, or your property. So what that means is that you're appointing someone or people or an organisation to manage those affairs should you lose your capacity. By doing that, you basically go and see a lawyer and they can help you establish these documents which says, I want X to be appointed in this role to manage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 for me.
Right.
And it might be really general. It might be more specific. Just as a side note, when you can also have people manage your financial or property affairs for you while you still have capacity. So, for example, if you travel a lot, you can appoint someone to manage those affairs for you while you're overseas.
Yeah.
So if I need to go down to the bank for my parents, say they've appointed me as their attorney, I can then go and sign on their behalf with their authority.
Yeah, so you don't have to fly home and get all the stuff sorted and then jet back off again. That is super important for people, especially younger people that are maybe doing OEs or getting work experience overseas.
Yeah. And so I think it's really important because it's such a quick and efficient process to have an enduring power of attorney in place. It's cost effective, financially timely, and emotionally. Those affairs are in order. That box is ticked. It's sorted. Whereas if you don't have an enduring power of attorney in place, what happens then is that if you then lose your capacity, someone then has to apply essentially to be appointed in that role, which is going to court.
And that sounds expensive.
It is. Again, financially, timely, and emotionally. Particularly for those people involved, right? And it's not necessarily a quick process. So for example, for an uncontested application to the court, can still take a matter of months.
Wow.
And a few $1,000s. Whereas sometimes they're contested. So say if Uncle Joe wants to be appointed to manage nephew's affairs, but Aunt Sally says he is not appropriate, you're going to be squabbling over this and it can take years. So it's so simple to go and speak to a lawyer really quickly, and your other advisors, accountants and insurance brokers, anybody, to get these affairs in line to make sure that they're fit for purpose.
Yeah. I think that's always my biggest fear as well when because I am an insurance broker, I essentially fund people into what they want to happen if anything happens to them. But there's no legal wraparound. It just goes to them. And if they're not able to sign a claim form, for example, what do we do with it? And you've got people that are dealing with, if your loved one is now incapacitated, there's a whole lot of grief and a whole lot of emotional stuff happening there on that side as well. Do you really want to throw in?
And so say if there's a situation, for example, whereby someone loses their capacity by way of accident and you're in hospital and someone needs to be making decisions on the go and doctors and nurses are throwing things at you. Well, if you don't have those documents in place, I'm sorry, but legally, it's not quite right.
Yeah.
So you may as well just have those affairs in order, and then whoever's appointed in those roles can make those decisions for you.
Nice.
And sort out those property affairs, sort out, if they need to access your bank accounts to put you into a home or anything like that, you can make those decisions immediately.
Yeah, nice. And then when it comes to if it gets worse, so you die. Because I talk to people all the time. Obviously, that's what I do, life insurance. But one of the questions that we ask is, do you have a will? And everyone goes, I'm meant to do it. I'm meant to sort it. And some of them say, just go to Whitcoulls and get the will kit or whatever it is. So what's tell me the importance of a will.
Just to explain, a will is a document which defines what you want to happen to your personally owned assets or estate upon your death. So we'll talk about trusts in a second, but this is your personal, so your bank accounts, your KiwiSaver, that sort of stuff. Any of it, really. Everybody, again, should have a will. It's, again, a very, very simple exercise. It can be very general or it can be really specific, okay? And basically go see a lawyer, your accountant, your advisors about what it should look like. Very, very easy task to tick off and relatively inexpensive. And once you've got it, it's in place. With a will, you're basically appointing someone to manage your estate upon your death. They would then work with the appropriate authorities, lawyers, accountants, whatever, to then tidy up your estate upon your death and distribute it in accordance with your wishes. Okay. It's, as you touch a will kit, makes me cringe because that just screams to me litigation.
Right.
Okay. If you don't tick the technicality boxes correctly, you're in a whole lot of trouble. So I just strongly urge, all lawyers and accountants will strongly urge that you actually just get it done properly. And again, a really inexpensive exercise and something so important. In the event you don't have a will, you're looking at letters of administration. I'm not going to bore you with the detail, but going to court.
Cool.
To have it all tidied up. And again, very lengthy and can be costly exercise.
Yeah.
Just because you have a will doesn't mean it's not going to be contested.
Okay.
But this is why it's important to get that advice to kind of tick those boxes off to make it as bulletproof as possible. And I guess, when your relationships evolve as well, if you don't have like adequate relationship property agreements in place, you can still provide provisions in your will to kind of eliminate those people from making a claim. But again, if you've got an estranged child or, anything like that, then just make sure you get the appropriate legal advice to ensure that your estate is distributed in accordance with your wishes. And, your advisors can talk you through those processes. Now, if you have a trust, it's slightly different because technically a trust is owning its assets rather than you personally. And a lot of people get mixed up with that. They still think that because they've got a trust, they still own that asset, but technically the trust owns the asset. Okay. And so when you establish a trust, if you have established a trust, you should have or will have what's called a memorandum of wishes at the same time. And basically it says in the event of death, these are my wishes, or these are the trust's wishes in terms of how the estate is distributed. Wills, you can be really creative. Okay, so you can, as I said before, you can be as specific as you like.
Okay.
In terms of your funeral directions, your wishes, but also, if you want to, there's a particular heirloom or something of sentimental importance to you, or monetary value, you can distribute that specifically, but also you could be quite general too. So divide equally between X, Y, Z, or but just take advice depending on your circumstances. And on that point, as life evolves, the will should evolve with you.
Thank you for reminding me. My parents still have the same will that they had when we were children, and I'm saying, Mum, you might want to think about updating that. You've got grandchildren now. Financially, we're probably, this generation is probably okay, but we probably don't need to think about care for us children anymore. And it's another thing to think about, I guess. Hey, you can specify who will look after your children.
Yes. So both guardianship and care.
Right.
So distinguishing those points there is who will actually care for any children under the age of 16, physically care for them.
Gotcha.
Guardianship, who's going to be making important decisions affecting those children or have say in those decisions, such as what school they go to, medical treatment, religious denomination, those important life kind of decisions. They can be different, they can be the same. And so it's again expressing those wishes within your will to make sure that your children are adequately provided.
I didn't realize you could separate those. That's quite cool, because you might have someone that you think, look, you'll be a really great parent, but probably not going to make excellent decisions. So you can actually spread the load in terms of responsibility. Hey?
And it takes a village, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But sometimes you might just appoint one person to be the whole umbrella.
Yep. Under children. That's one thing I didn't realize until we set up our wills, was that you can actually choose when they can sort of get any inheritance, because is the default 18 that they could get to?
Age.
Right. And
18.
And I realized that when I was 18, I was pretty stupid with money. Yeah. So can you specify an age that, okay, great. Okay.
Yes. And, when I speak to clients, generally, again, it's different for specific circumstances and different people, but I always say, I think of myself at 18, there's no way I'd be making good decisions with, a lump of money or a property. When you think about yourself in that situation, when do you think it's appropriate? So I typically advise my clients 18, 21 or 25.
Okay.
But that's not to say that your trustees or your executor can not distribute inheritance to your children in advance.
Okay.
For example, betterment of life, so travel, education, medicinal reasons.
Yep.
They can enter the estate earlier to distribute an interim distribution
Okay.
in advance, and
Like a little bit of pocket money, but not the whole thing.
to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yes, and basically your trustees or your executor have the control.
So yeah, if it's actually something smart.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. Then we're thinking about children. Children grow up. They hopefully meet nice people.
Yes.
In the meantime, we're steadily building our wealth. We probably are okay now, and now we're thinking about next generation. We'll maybe want to help our children into first homes. We want to make sure that that benefit goes to our children and not someone else's child or, some strange person they've picked up off the street. So how do we do that? How do we make sure that it goes to the right people or the right channels?
So again, just to drill kind of the take-home message here, as life is evolving, check in with your advisors, making sure that everything is fit for purpose.
Okay.
So I think a couple of points to touch on here in terms of the intergenerational concept. I think as people are living longer and the older generations have a lot more equity and money than what the younger millennials or younger generations are going to have to rely on their bank of mum and dad or some kind of assistance, right?
Yeah.
And so typically I would, we look at, I guess, two aspects here. One being setting up a trust. Is that appropriate for your situation in terms of, how is the succession going to work and how is it protected? And then the second one, for example, your children or child wants to buy a property and you've got, a bit of cash or some money coming off term deposit that you're like, actually, I could help you by applying this or, no matter what it is, I'm going to sell a property and here's, I'm going to help you out.
Yep.
Making sure that it is appropriately and adequately documented.
Okay.
So, for example, as I said before, child's wanting to buy a property, their partner's going to be living there too, mum and dad are advancing money.
Yep.
Being really clear, is that advancement a gift or a loan? And having that documented accurately to protect yourself, because in the event that that relationship breaks up, then partner, your child says, no, that was always a loan. We've got to pay my parents back.
Yep.
The other one says, no, it was a gift. Your parents gifted that to me, which means we never have to pay it back. So making sure that those documents are in place, every party involved receiving adequate legal advice.
Gotcha.
And, touching base with all your advisors to make sure that that's appropriate for the circumstances. We're seeing this more and more.
Yeah.
And lawyer, it's not foreign to lawyers at all. But making sure you do whatever you can to protect, if it is particularly a loan, that you are going to get that money back. It's also, if I was advising the parents, I'd be grandparents or parents, whatever you are, I'd be saying, you might want to be encouraging that the child and the partner have what's called a contracting out agreement, which again just basically is like a prenup. But it just says, this is your expectation in terms of this money and everyone's on the same page. You can't force someone to enter into a contracting out agreement though. So, as I say, gently encourage, but there are other documents like a deed of acknowledgement of debt, for example, which you can implement to secure your respective interests so everyone's on the same page as to what this advancement is.
Right. Can I do it on an A4 piece of paper and everyone signs it? Okay.
Well,
why?
You can. I wouldn't advise you do so, because it's just best that you all get independent advice about this and making sure you know what everybody is, no matter who you are in this situation. You know what you're signing up to. You know what the consequences and the implications of signing this document are.
Yep. Okay. So I'm bank of mum and dad.
Yes.
I'm helping my child into their first home.
Yes.
And let's say I gift them, because I'm super rich at this stage.
Generous.
Yeah. And I gift them a big lump sum of money, and their partner, they buy a house with their partner, everything's honky-dory. 5 years later, it's Splitsville, and they didn't have a contracting out agreement. What happens to my child's share of the property, or what happens?
So without a contracting out agreement, if they've established what's called a de facto relationship, to define a de facto relationship in a general sense, you're living together for a period of 3 years or more, or you have a child together.
Okay.
But living together doesn't necessarily mean physically living together. It's a much broader definition. And I'm not going to bore you the details, but it's, just as an example, there's a sexual relationship. They're financially dependent on each other. They've got their toothbrush at each other's house. Whatever, there's a lot there that if this was to be litigated, the court would look into. There's a number of things.
Yeah, gotcha.
So in a nutshell, if that qualifies a de facto relationship and that money's gifted, that's now the family home. They're living there together.
Okay.
Gone.
So she gets half of my gift.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are sometimes exceptions, but relationship property is a bit of a minefield again.
Yeah.
Speak to a lawyer to get that qualified advice.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, so they have same couple.
Yes.
They do have a child.
Yes.
They separate.
Yes.
And the money, I'm like, okay, money's gone. Half of it's gone to the other partner. That's fine. That's my grandchild's parent. Say I want to now provide financially in the event of my death to my grandchild only, not their parent.
Yes.
That's not my child. Is there a way that I can kind of do that? How do I make sure that it's for the benefit of my grandchild going forward?
Yeah. So a specific nomination in your will.
Okay.
Yeah. And or right. Got to trust there'd be a way to provide that.
Named to that person or that grandchild.
Yes.
Right.
And basically, if you specifically name someone, then they should receive that estate. And it might be, for example, we're not, in a bizarre situation where your child has actually passed away, but the surviving parent is their partner. But again, who are the trustees and the executors of that estate?
Gotcha.
And how they're going to manage it. I keep drilling back to the fact that your circumstances are specific to you.
Yes.
Go and get your own independent advice, because the lawyer will then be able to cater that specific law and knowledge to your situation.
Yeah. I don't know if you get it as well, but everyone says, oh, insurance, I'll get around to it kind of thing. And I do kind of get this vibe of, I'll get around to my will, or I'll get around to my enduring power of attorney, or what is an enduring power of attorney?
Yes.
And I always say it's so much easier to get this stuff sorted now than it is when you need it, right?
Totally.
And it will be the same, obviously, with like relationship property stuff.
Yes.
Right? If it's a awkward conversation with your partner or your children about their partner, have it now.
ASAP.
Right.
We, and probably like most professional industries, have a real flurry right towards Christmas. We try and tidy up those to-do lists before Christmas, because it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
I don't know. All of those things are always on the to-do list. I've got to go and review my trust. I've got to, touch base with my lawyer and do X, Y, Z. It can wait another week. It's wait another week. It can wait another week. And life gets busy. It does. Yeah. We're all guilty of it. But I can't emphasize the importance. As I say, as life evolves, situations change, and you also do not know what is around the corner. And part of the job of being a lawyer is to kind of future-proof for your clients, right? Yeah. And so sooner that's in place, the better, because then you can really sit back and relax. And it's not this niggle over here saying you've got to do this. It's done. And then it's easy thereafter to update.
Yeah. Because you've got a base to build from.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
foundation.
cool. Yeah, and I guess then your lawyer now knows your situation. You kind of update them on what's changed.
And do I need to change anything? No, it's all still fit for purpose.
Yeah.
Great, cool. Or no, you might just want to add this and we'll remove that, or, And so it's typically, like, for example, with a relationship property agreement, you might have a contracting out agreement or like a prenup with your partner, and as circumstances has changed. Initially, for example, everything was kept separate. We've gone into this relationship, we've agreed that, we've come in with respective asset bases or equities, and what's mine is mine and yours is yours, and that's the agreement, fine. But 5 years into the relationship, you're still really happy and you're committed, and actually, no, I want to share this now, or share an aspect of it.
Yeah.
And, you don't have to redo the whole agreement.
Yeah.
I typically advise an addendum to it is fine, but so long as you're both getting the independent legal advice, to say you understand the implications and consequences of what you're now signing up for and how that's changed.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, and how often should we be doing this? Like, so I say, like, insurance, Kiwis have every year to 2 years catch up, review it. Is it similar, or is it kind of life event?
Yeah,
based?
I typically advise my clients periodically, kind of set a reminder on your phone every 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
Miles of time, come back, But also, something changes. What happens if one of you, or you're become so unwell or injured that you can no longer work, or you retire, or you have a child together, you have grandchildren. You know, there's all these life things that can happen that change the scene. So what's the situation? What's the landscape in front of us?
Yeah.
Does this appropriately reflect that?
Brilliant. Thank you. Because we're not all just about the building up phase, and Darcy and I talk about this all the time, is that we're there for the exciting bits. We're there for the marriages. We're there for the buying of the first home, the kids. Yeah, we are there cheering you on. But you need the backstop as well. You need the people that are going to be there to support the struggles, I guess, or the stuff that's not going so well. And don't run and hide from your advisors on that aspect either. Like, we're actually there on your team for good and bad.
Absolutely.
We're there, as you said, to protect you, future-proof your situation, especially things like investments or wealth building, because that's taken you a lifetime to organise and grow. And just one event or one shoddy document, one Whitcoul's will away.
Sorry, Whitcoul's.
Yeah. From losing it all.
And so often a client will come to me and it's so far down the track and I'm like, hold on, there's a red flag here, there's a red flag here, there's a red flag here. What was stopping you, you know? And it's that sometimes it can be shame, or it can be embarrassment, or sometimes it can just be like, oh no, I trusted them, or, you know, I just thought it was a one-off, or whatever. Just update your advisors and they'll say, look, these are your options. You then choose which option you want to take.
Yeah. And
before it's too late.
Yeah. I was saying that to someone. I was like, as advisors, we're not here to tell you what to do.
No.
We're here to give you a view of the landscape, point out the things that you might not see. And you go away.
Here's your options.
Do what you want.
We advise you take X or Y.
Yeah.
You choose.
Yeah. So someone wants to come and get advice. Where are you? Well, I know you're on maternity leave at the minute, so they probably don't want to come to your house. But
so I'm back in October, but nevertheless, have an amazing team at Simpson Weston.
Cool.
We are a full service law firm.
Right.
We're based in Takapuna, but nationwide. We work collaboratively with our advisors. Or with all advisors. Whether it's you guys or whether it's accountants. We take that approach and whatever's best for the client. We meet clients at all different ages and stages.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming along today. Thank you so much again for coming in.
Thanks for having me.